Chapter 358. He says in a cold voice, if you don't sit cross-legged and circulate, the medicinal power of the 9 orifices golden dan will be wasted in vain. That tone is full of indulgence and tolerance, as if the one who was being unreasonable just now was Mu Yang. Mu Yang also feels the alternating hot and cold forces in her qi si. She promptly sits down cross-legged. The mysterious energy within her body runs wildly, flowing through her limbs and bones. As the mysterious energy around Mu Yang increases, it becomes stronger and stronger. Melodious music faintly drifts through the air. Ming-ju raises his eyebrows, his always cold and unperturbed eyes reveal a touch of astonishment. Because when the music is ringing in his ears, he actually feels that the power within his body, so powerful that even he himself can't control, is faintly resonating. However, how is this possible? As he's bewildered, the sound of the zither becomes louder and louder, then gradually disappears. Mu Yang slowly opens her eyes from sitting cross-legged. There's no change in her expression or appearance, even the powerful internal force around her is completely restrained. But those pair of shimmering and exquisite peach blossom eyes, when they open, are frighteningly bright. Like the most magnificent treasure that was originally covered with a thin layer of dust. But now that the dust has been washed away, it reveals a bright splendor. Ming-ju looks at Mu Yang with a frighteningly hot gaze. His girl had always been alluring and radiant. Now, it makes people even more unable to move their eyes away. Ming-ju wishes he could hide her, so that only he can see and touch her. Mu Yang takes a deep breath and stands up from the ground, a faint smile on her face. The bottleneck that has shackled her for so long has finally been broken. Her cultivation has now reached the high pre-celestial level. In the entire Yenwu continent, it could be said that she has rarely met her match. And all of this is thanks to Ming-ju. Forcing her to stay here to plant the Dark Cloud Spirit Flower is for her sake. Giving the Dark Cloud Spirit Flower to Shalanling to refine pills is also for her sake. Looking up at the man's dazzlingly handsome face, Mu Yang says softly, Ming-ju, thank you. Thank you for everything you've done for me. How can I, Jun Mu Yang, make you pay so much for me? Ming-ju steps forward, wrapping his arms around Mu Yan's waist. Leaning forward, he slowly says, are you very touched by what Ben Jun has done for you? Without waiting for Mu Yang to react, he continued, since you're so touched, then devote your life to me. Mu Yang, hey, being touched is just a fleeting cloud. Miss, are we leaving just like that? Let that woman seduce the emperor. Inside the emperor garden, Ruizhu was suppressed by Ming-ju's powerful aura to the point where she couldn't even speak properly. As soon as she left the emperor garden, she couldn't help feeling jealous and annoyed. What does that Jun Muyan count for? Isn't she just a newly rising third-rate doctor? How could he compare to her young miss? If the person favored by the emperor was her young miss, then she would naturally be able to stay by her young miss side and look at that man's godlike appearance every day. Thinking of this, Ruizhu's cheeks became a little red, and a misty look appeared in her eyes. Shalanling looked at her coldly and was about to open her mouth to curse. Suddenly, a white light flashed. Ruizhu and Shalanling screamed in unison. Shalanling felt a sharp pain on her left cheek, and her shoulder was hit by a heavy force. She staggered 2 steps, and with great difficulty, she stood firm. She touched her face with her hand. Chapter 359. Ruizhu looked up and saw a snow-white fat rabbit somersaulting in the air before falling to the ground. On its furry face, a pair of small Mungbin eyes stared coldly at Shalanling. Obviously, it was just a harmless little animal, but being stared at by such a pair of eyes gave her an inexplicable creepy feeling. Shixianzi, what happened? The movement here attracted the guards at the entrance of the Emperor Garden. When he saw the wound on Shalanling's face, the leader of the guards exclaimed, Shixianzi, your face. Shalanling's white left cheek was scratched 3 times. Although these 3 cuts were not deep, they were still bloody, extending from her temples to her lips. This caused Shalanling's originally elegant and refined face to become somewhat sinister. Shalanling took a deep breath and slowly calmed her emotions. She pointed to the fat rabbit and said, catch that beast for me. The guards were stunned. They heard Ruizhu shout from the side, "It's that beast that scratched my family's young lady's face. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and catch it." This time, the guards no longer hesitated and directly rushed towards the fat rabbit. They did not know what happened in the Emperor Garden's inner courtyard. They thought that Shi Lanling was really an important guest of the Emperor. Now that Shi Xianzi was injured at the entrance of the Emperor Garden, if they did not help, they would not be able to bear the consequences if the Emperor blamed them. The fat rabbit saw more than a dozen fierce people rushing over. Making a prompt decision, it twisted its buttocks, turned around, and jumped. Its fat body drew a round arc in the air and eventually fell into a small embrace. It turned its head in the small embrace. The fat rabbit glanced at the people rushing over with disdain. It was now a rabbit with the support of its young master. These people wanted to bully it. No way. Bah. It was not a rabbit. The fat rabbit rolled its eyes helplessly. It must have followed the female devil for too long. It had almost forgotten that its real body was not a stupid rabbit, but the guards did not expect that they would work together to catch a rabbit, but they still failed to catch it. Their eyes all looked in the direction the fat rabbit had jumped. Then they all froze. They saw that the one holding the rabbit was a little boy about 4 or 5 years old. It was just that this little boy was too handsome. He was like a fairy that had fallen into the mortal world, making people want to give him all the best treasures in the world. However, when the guards met the little boy's eyes, they shuddered inexplicably. His ice blue eyes seemed to be frozen with frost, cold and disdainful. He was clearly so young, but he made people want to submit to him. The person standing closest to Jun Shong even has a strange feeling of being stared at by Jun Shong. Young master, please hand over the rabbit in your hand." The guards finally managed to recover from their shock but still spoke with some trepidation. "This rabbit injured my Emperor Garden's honored guest. We need to give our honored guest an explanation." Xiao Bao looked up at the guard who had spoken, then shifted his gaze to Shi Lanling's face. The 3 scars left by the fat rabbit were very obvious and bloody. The fat rabbit also looked over and was very satisfied when he saw his masterpiece. Its short tail wagged, and its little green bin eyes sparkled. Humph, it smelled that the woman had the same disgusting smell as the bad woman who destroyed the dark cloud spiritual flower. Chapter 360. Perhaps she was the miss that the bad woman mentioned. Although the fat rabbit was afraid of the female devil was the little master's mother after all and the little master's favorite person. How could he be bullied so easily? Therefore, when it saw Shi Lanling today, it immediately pounced on her. It wanted to avenge the she-devil first. Anyway, with its little master around, it was not afraid of anything. Xiao Bao lowered his head and looked at the smug fat rabbit. She slapped its chubby butt with her little hand. Xiao Bao was a good child. Nyang Qin said that if you did something wrong, you should apologize. Although the one who scratched him was the fat rabbit, who asked the fat rabbit to be his pet. Nyang Qin said that since he raised a pet, he had joint responsibility. Therefore, after Xiao Bao hit the fat rabbit, he grabbed its neck and walked in front of Shi Lanling. "Sorry. My pet hurt you. I can give you a bottle of medicine, I promise," she said in a childish voice. "Do you think a bottle of potion is enough for you to hurt my young lady?" Ruizhu shouted in disbelief, "If you know what's good for you, then quickly hand over the little bastard in your hand. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite." Shi Lanling, on the other hand, did not make a fuss like Ruizhu. But her eyes were also very cold. His gaze that seemed to be dipped in poison landed on the fat rabbit's body, wishing that he could immediately skin it and tear its bones apart. "Little Gongzi, you are young and insensible. I can forgive you for letting your pet hurt me. But since this pet hurt me, I have to deal with it." Xiao Bao frowned and looked up at Shi Lanling. "Auntie, how do you want to deal with this?" Auntie, what? What did you call me?" Shi Lanling's voice rose uncontrollably. She simply couldn't believe her ears. Xiao Bao raised his eyebrows, but his expression remained cold. "Auntie, is there a problem?" Xiao Bao remembers his mother's words very well. Mother said that when you see a beautiful girl, you should call her big sister. If he saw a beautiful girl older than his mother, he would call her auntie. The two women in front of her were older than her mother. They weren't beautiful, and the aura they exuded made people dislike them. Just like those talkative aunties that the people of the Ink camp hate the most. So, calling this woman in front of him auntie was not a problem at all. Shilanling took a deep breath, then another deep breath. He told himself over and over again not to bother with a child. However, the anger in her eyes had already made her unable to maintain her lofty and aloof fairy appearance. Xiao Bao saw that Shilanling did not speak. He felt that he should express the sincerity of his apology. Therefore, he took out a bottle of medicine and handed it to Shilanling. This bottle of medicine is also refined by Muyin. If it was placed in the Ghost City or Junji drugstore, it could be sold for a sky-high price. Xiao Bao now gave it to Shilanling for free, thinking that the sincerity of his apology was enough. Shilanling took the medicine but didn't apply it on the wound. Instead, she looked at it with disdain, raised her hand, and smashed the porcelain vase onto the ground. Rui Zhu sneers, "Do you know that my family's miss is the best alchemist in the Yenwu continent? You want to appease my miss anger with a mere draft? Kid, are you dreaming?" Shilanling's expression was cold and arrogant. She looked down at Xiao Bao from above. "I'll say it again. Hand over the animal in your hand and I won't bother with you." Chapter 361. The already cold little face becomes even colder. That pair of clear eyes also recedes all the warmth, just like an icy abyss. All the drafts on Xiao Bao's body were painstakingly refined by Nyang Qin. Because she was afraid that he would get hurt, she always carried a lot of them with her. However, Xiao Bao is usually reluctant to use them. Because he doesn't want his Nyang Qin to refine another bottle. However, this woman actually smashed the drafts that Nyang Qin refined. The fat rabbit seems to feel its little master's anger, and it lets out a beast-like howl. All the white hair on its body stands up, itching to rush out at once. Xiao Bao suppresses his anger, holding the fat rabbit in his arms, and coldly says, "What if I don't hand it over?" Shilanling was startled when she met his cold eyes. There's a faint fear growing in her heart. But then, her complexion becomes very unsightly. A 4 or 5-year-old child actually scared her. That kind of shame reminds her of the humiliation she just received in the Emperor Garden. Moreover, looking at it now, she feels that this child looks a bit similar to Jun Muyin. This makes Shilanling more and more disgusted, and she even has a faint murderous intent. "You." Shilanling turns to the Emperor Garden's guards and says, "Capture that beast for me, dead or alive." The guards look at each other, somewhat hesitant for a while. After all, that's a 4 or 5-year-old child. They are a group of grown men, and they want to make a move on a child. Shilanling's face immediately sinks. "You want to disobey my, Shilanling's orders?" Rui Zhu also chimes in, "Don't forget, my family's miss was injured at the entrance of the Emperor Garden, right under your noses. If you don't give an explanation today, not to mention Di Jun not sparing you, there will no longer be a place for you in the Ghost City." Hearing Rui Zhu's words, the guards' faces immediately change. They all know how high Shilanling's status is in the Ghost City. And for them, being guards of the Emperor Garden is only temporary. In the end, they will have to go back to the Ghost City to make a living. If they offend Shixianzi, then they really won't be able to bear the consequences in the future. Thinking of this, the guards no longer hesitate and directly rush towards Xiao Bao. He had thought that a 4 or 5-year-old child would panic or even cry in the face of such a sudden change. However, Little Treasure's expression didn't change from beginning to end. He just raised his hand and threw the fat rabbit to the side. He even had the time to coldly warn, "If you cause any more trouble, I'll turn you into stir-fried rabbit meat." Nyang Qin has always been thinking about it. The fat rabbit shrank its neck and curled itself into a ball. He had a pitiful look that said, "I was wrong, I won't dare to do it again." The guard's eyes lit up when he saw Xiao Bao throw away the fat rabbit. If he didn't attack the child and directly handed the rabbit over to Shixianzi, then everyone would be happy. At the thought of this, one of them pounced at the fat rabbit like a bolt of lightning. The rabbit lying on the ground was motionless, like a furry ball. The guard was about to grab the spear. Suddenly, a powerful Xian Qi surrounded his body. Then, before he could react, he felt a sharp pain in his lower body. He immediately let out a miserable howl like a pig being butchered, and his whole body was ejected like a cannonball. He flew straight for more than 10 meters before landing on the ground. He clutched his crotch, wailing like a ghost and howling like a wolf, unable to get up again. Chapter 362. His icy blue eyes didn't waver in the slightest, coldly sweeping over everyone. The other guards suddenly felt their balls tighten, clamping their legs. After a cup of tea's worth of time, all the guards in the Emperor Garden's outer courtyard were prostrating on the ground, screaming like pigs being butchered. Only Xiao Bao still stood there with an indifferent expression, his handsome little face devoid of any expression, his clothes without a single wrinkle. It was as if the person who had just knocked down 7 or 8 high-level martial artists wasn't him. The fat rabbit happily wagged its short tail and jumped into Xiao Bao's arms. Its mouth issued a flattering whine, "Little Master is the best. Long live Little Master. I want to follow Little Master for a lifetime, hug Little Master's thigh and never waver." Shalanling stared dumbfounded at the scene in front of her, almost unable to believe her eyes. A child of only 4 or 5 years old actually knocked down the Emperor Garden's guards. And each one of these guards is an elite of the Ghost City. Each one of them can become an outstanding and famous expert in the outside world. However, these people were knocked down by a 4-year-old milk baby. Moreover, they were knocked down without any ability to resist. This milk baby, who the hell is he? Rui Zhu was horrified, looking at Xiao Bao, then at the wailing guard on the ground. Miss, this, Shalanling took another deep breath, pushed away the flustered Rui Zhu, and walked towards Xiao Bao step by step. Her face had regained its usual arrogance and indifference, aloof, like a fairy. But the hideous scar on her face destroyed her temperament. It made her whole person look gloomy. Shalanling walked in front of Xiao Bao, condescendingly looking at him and the rabbit in his arms. "I didn't want to attack a child, but you forced me." She paused. "I'll give you one last chance. Give me the animal in your arms, and I'll spare your life." Spare his life, but the death penalty can be avoided, but the punishment cannot be forgiven. Shalanling was becoming more and more displeased with this little boy, more and more disgusted. Therefore, she would never let him off easily today. The corner of Xiao Bao's mouth gently hooked up, his handsome little face revealing a cold and sarcastic smile. "Auntie, you talk too much. If you want to fight, just fight. Why are you so long-winded?" Shalanling's complexion turned pale. She looked at Xiao Bao with a gaze as cold and malevolent as a viper's. "Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish." Although Xiao Bao had defeated the guards in the Emperor Garden's outer court, Shalanling never felt she would lose. She was a heaven-rank expert. He didn't make a move because he didn't want to lower himself to argue with a little kid. But this little boy in front of her was simply too disgusting. Today, she would let him have a taste of the consequences of offending her. Shalanling struck out with her palm, and a powerful dark force circulated in the air. Strands of strange bluish-green light shrouded the space between his fingers. If a knowledgeable person saw this scene, they would definitely be terrified. Because Shalanling had not only used 90% of her Xian energy in this palm strike, but she had also mixed the deadly poison, white jade purple frost powder, into the palm chi. This kind of poison would not kill the person immediately, and it would not kill them immediately. However, it could destroy a person's meridians and chi, causing them to suffer and finally walk towards death in pain. At this moment, Shalanling even forgot that she had to deal with the rabbit that injured her face. He only wanted Xiao Bao to pay a painful price. Chapter 363. Awu. The fat rabbit felt the horror of the white jade purple frost, and all its hair stood on end. It desperately cried out, hoping that the little master would quickly escape. But Xiao Bao's expression was still so cold, as if he didn't know that danger had arrived. The little white and tender palm pushed out, and all the profound energy in his body gathered in the palm. Shalanling's eyes revealed a cold smile. In her eyes, the annoying child in front of her has already become a corpse. Bang! An earth-shattering collision of profound energy, mixed with a hurricane-like airwave, swept the area of 10 meters around the entrance of the Emperor Garden. Shalanling's whole body flew back several meters, and it took her a lot of effort to stand still. But she only felt the blood in her body churning, and the blood almost rushed to her throat. Her eyes widened, looking at the little boy who also retreated, but only a few steps back. Her eyes were filled with horror. She was a dignified high-rank heaven-stage ancient martial artist. In the collision of profound energy, she actually lost to a 4-year-old child. How is this possible? How is this possible? But immediately, Shalanling calmed down. The horror on her face turned into ridicule and resentful pity. I don't know what method you used to fight evenly with me with profound energy. But you are destined to pay the price for offending me today, Shalanling slowly said, the resentment and coldness in her eyes completely unconcealed at this moment. I will also find out your family background, and make your parents pay the same price. I want you to know that offending me, Shalanling, is an unwise choice. And all this is because your parents didn't teach you well. Xiao Bao's originally cold face finally showed a trace of anger. This woman is really, really hateful. Xiao Bao could tolerate anything she said to him. After all, it was the little rabbit who did wrong first. But this annoying old woman first broke the elixir that his mother had painstakingly refined. Now she said that she would make a move against his mother. This Xiao Bao absolutely would not allow it. The clear blue eyes, like the sky, turned into a cold and ruthless ice blue. Xiao Bao slowly raised his hand, his eyes full of decisive killing intent. He knew that the woman in front of him had the same cultivation base as him, mid-rank heaven stage. But it was far longer than him advancing to mid-rank heaven stage. However, Xiao Bao was not afraid of her at all. It just so happened that he also wanted to try and see just how powerful the cultivation method taught by that lecture was. Her fair and tender palms slowly formed a seal in front of her chest. The Xian Qi of heaven and earth was slowly stirred by the movement of his fingers. A terrifying power gradually took shape around Little Treasure. However, at that moment, the Emperor Garden's gates suddenly opened. A cry of surprise came from inside the door. Xiao Bao? Xiao Bao suddenly turned around and saw a beautiful figure walking out of the courtyard. What Shalanling? What anger? He couldn't care less. Her small body soared up like a bird, and she threw herself into the arms of the person who had just arrived. Mother. Xiao Bao's voice was very high, and even slightly hoarse and trembling. After throwing himself into Muyan's embrace, he hugs her neck even more tightly, unwilling to let go even in death. Mu Yang also held Xiao Bao tightly in her arms. Smelling the cool and milky fragrance that had yet to recede from Xiao Bao's body, the rims of her eyes immediately became wet. Ever since her baby was born, they had never been apart for a single day. This time, they hadn't seen each other for 7 whole days. Chapter 364. Unfortunately, her heart is aching and full of pity. So much so that she opens her mouth for a long time, but can't say a word. Nyang Qin, I miss you so much. Xiao Bao rubs Mu Yang's neck with all his might, and sniffles, forcing himself not to let the tears come out. That lecture said that he's already a man, he can't cry, and he can't let his mother worry. Mu Yang's voice is hoarse. Nyang Qin also misses you so much. Di Mingju, who had come out with Mu Yang, coldly snorts when he sees this scene. It's like a sea of vinegar has turned over in his heart. This heartless woman, she hasn't seen him for a month, and she doesn't even miss him. She's almost completely forgotten about him. Now, she hasn't seen her son for 7 days, and she's already revealing her true feelings. Humph. One day, he will make this big and small one day without him feel like 3 autumns. Seeing that he's going on a long journey, she hugs him and cries, not letting him leave. Mu Yang slowly comes back to her senses with great difficulty, and gently touches her son's little face. She only feels that her son has lost weight in 7 days. Her heart is even more distressed. Xiao Bao, how did you get here? How have you been these days? As Mu Yang speaks, she examines Xiao Bao's body. Suddenly, she frowns, and her expression becomes incomparably cold. This is the white jade purple frost powder. How could you be contaminated with such a sinister drug? Xiao Bao immediately flattens his mouth and looks at Shalanling. His voice is still cold, but with a bit of grievance, Nyang Qin, they bullied me. In fact, Xiao Bao doesn't feel wronged at all. Because these people are no match for him, and he simply doesn't put them in his eyes. But Xiao Bao hasn't seen Mu Yang for too long, and he really misses his mother. He misses his mother caring for him, hugging him, kissing him, misses his mother protecting him all the time, supporting him. So when he sees Mu Yang, he can't help but want to act spoiled. The corners of Mu Yang's mouth slowly hooks up into a shallow arc. Her originally bright and beautiful appearance instantly becomes even more charming and moving. But the people who are swept by her gaze can't help but shiver. It's you, bullying my son? The guards, who have been beaten up, have just stood up from the ground. When they meet Mu Yang's gaze, they are all drenched in cold sweat. He even felt like crying. They were the ones being bullied. Han Yi comes out from behind Di Mingju. He first greets Xiao Bao, "Greetings, little Gongzi." He then turned to the Emperor Garden's guards and asked in a cold voice, "What the hell happened? Have you eaten a bear's heart or a leopard's gall? How dare you attack little master?" Hearing Han Yi's words, the guards simultaneously look like they've been struck by lightning, each and every one of them dumbfounded. What? Young master? Could it be that this extraordinarily beautiful little boy was the emperor's child? Everyone's line of sight turns towards Muyan, Di Mingju and Xiao Bao. What he saw was incredible. Xiao Bao's facial features resemble Muyan. However, that pair of blue eyes seemed to be carved from the same mold as the emperor. When the three of them stood together, they looked like a harmonious and beautiful family. Moreover, how could a 4-year-old child be so powerful? A single person was able to take down a large group of strong men? Because that was their young master, the son of their most terrifying emperor. This time, not only did the guards want to cry, but they also wanted to kill themselves. Chapter 365. At this time, regret is really like a torrential river, flowing without end. Unfortunately, it's too late for regret. After Han Yi listens to the guard's narration of the whole process, he turns to look at Xiao Bao. His cold and stern face is immediately filled with a smile. "Little master, how do you think these people who offended their superiors should be dealt with?" Although Xiao Bao is the child of Miss Muyan and her ex-husband, Han Yi knows that in order to pursue Miss Muyan, Zhun Shong has long regarded Xiao Bao as his own son, even cultivating him as the successor of the polar domain. Moreover, he doesn't know why, but Han Yi always feels that Xiao Bao and his Zhun Shong are very similar in terms of aura. If he wants to serve Xiao Bao as his master in the future, he doesn't have the slightest psychological pressure. Therefore, he doesn't even ask Zhun Shong about the matter of dealing with the guards, but directly asks for Xiao Bao's opinion. Sure enough, Zhun Shong doesn't object at all. He even condescends to throw him a look of appreciation, making Han Yi almost feel overwhelmed by the favor, suspecting that he's seeing things. Xiao Bao hugs Muyan's neck, looking at Di Mingju, then back at Muyan. He sees Muyan looking at him with a smile, without any intention of stopping him. He blinks his big watery eyes, and says with a straight face, "Do they get a salary?" Han Yi stares blankly, not understanding Xiao Bao's train of thought for a moment. He blankly nods, "Of course. The servants of the Emperor Garden, they don't just have a salary, their treatment is simply heaven-defying." Xiao Bao nods in all seriousness. Each person will be penalized with a year's salary, and have it delivered to the Junji Medical Center within 3 days. That's it. The guards have an incredulous look on their faces. No whipping, no crippling of their cultivation, not even losing their position in the Emperor Garden. Xiao Bao disdainfully glances at them. "You think it's not enough? It's enough, it's enough." The guards are overjoyed, and they fall to their knees. "Many thanks for the little master's forgiveness. Within 3 days, we will certainly deliver all the salary. It's just a year's salary, it doesn't matter even if it's 3 times. Xiao Bao turns to look at Muyan, his big eyes bright. "Nyang Qin, all the salary is for you. Do you like it?" Muyan smiles until her eyebrows are curved, unspeakably gentle. "Thank you baby, Nyang Qin likes it very much." A faint smile appeared on Xiao Bao's cold face. Her cheeks were rosy, and she looked indescribably cute. Han Yi silently glances at the cold-faced Zhun Shong. He couldn't help but wail in his heart, "Miss Zhun, young master, What kind of salary do you want? Isn't this salary given by our Jun Shong? As long as you bind our Jun Shong, the rare treasures under the heavens will be yours to pick. The guards who had escaped punishment climbed up from the ground in joy. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, he stole a glance at Shalanling, lowered his voice, and repeated what Shalanling had just said. When she finds out that it was Shalanling who infected Xiao Bao with the white jade purple frost powder, Muyan's expression suddenly turns frighteningly cold. This woman actually wanted to kill Xiao Bao. If it weren't for Xiao Bao's special physique, the poisons of the Yanwu continent could do nothing to him. Perhaps by now, Xiao Bao would already be seriously injured. As soon as she thinks that Xiao Bao will be hurt, Mu Yang can't control the violent killing intent boiling within her. However, without waiting for Muyan to react, Di Mingju is already slowly walking towards Shalanling. Shalanling's entire person is lifeless. Even if she were to die, she wouldn't believe that Di Mingju and Muyan already had an illicit relationship, and even had a bastard child. Chapter 366. What's more, the intimate scene of the three people just now really stings her eyes, and it also stings her heart. At this time, she sees Di Mingju walking towards her step by step. Shalanling's eyes can't help but redden, tears rolling down. Di Jun, you. Before she could finish speaking, Di Mingju has already interrupted her. Did you just say that Ben Jun didn't teach my son well? You still want Ben Jun to pay the price? Di Mingju's expression is very cold and indifferent. It could even be said to be indifferent. It's as if he simply doesn't care about anything in this world. And a mere Yanwu continent, he really doesn't need to pay attention to it. But it's this kind of indifference, that gaze that's like looking at an ant, that makes Shalanling's affection turn into fear in an instant. She opens her mouth, her voice trembling. Di Jun, I didn't know that was your. Once again, her voice hasn't fallen. Di Mingju doesn't even move his hand, but Shalanling screams. Her whole body soars into the air and falls to the ground. When she raises her head, everyone sees that her cheeks are swollen up. Coupled with the scar left by the rabbit, her originally elegant appearance suddenly becomes too horrible to look at. Di Mingju condescendingly looks at her, his expression carrying a hint of ridicule. Ben Jun's son, is he someone that you are qualified to teach a lesson? Shalanling covers her red and swollen face, her eyes filled with disbelief, fear, grief, and indignation. She sees that Di Mingju is about to make his move again. She couldn't bear it anymore, crying and shouting, Jun Muyan, don't go too far. It was clearly you who first instructed that animal to ruin my face. I just wanted to punish that animal, but your son refused, and even spoke ill of me. What's wrong with me teaching him a lesson? Hearing that, Muyan glances at the fat rabbit. The fat rabbit shivers a bit, then it jumps away and disappears. Actually, it has entered the space. It also knows that it has done something wrong. Although it doesn't regret it, it's also extremely afraid that the female devil will turn it into stir-fried rabbit meat. Xiao Bao slightly flattens his mouth, his voice gloomy. Nyang Qin, I apologized to Bunny, and also gave her the medicine that Nyang Qin refined, but not only did this woman not want it, she even smashed the bottle. Xiao Bao didn't continue, but Mu Yang looked at the broken porcelain vase at the door and the lingering medicinal fragrance in the air, and she knew what had happened. Mu Yang kissed Xiao Bao's face and said softly, Xiao Bao did the right thing. If you do something wrong, you have to apologize. But if you're bullied, you can't not retaliate. Hearing this, little Bao's dim blue eyes lit up. Muyan's line of sight turns and falls on Shalanling. The corner of her mouth holds a faint and cold smile. Shixianzi, I'm very sorry that my spiritual pet hurt you. But don't you think you've gone too far by trying to kill my son with the white jade violet frost powder? Hearing the words, white jade purple frost, the faces of those guards and Han Yi change. This is a famous sinister medicine in the Yanwu continent. It could torture people for a long time before they walked towards death in despair. Shalanling was called a fairy, but she used such a sinister thing to deal with a child. This is going too far. Shalanling's expression changes greatly. She didn't expect that Jun Muyan would actually recognize the white jade purple frost powder at a glance. Especially when she comes into contact with Di Mingju's cold and murderous gaze, she shudders all over. But she quickly forces herself to calm down. Chapter 367. Saying that, Shalanling looks at Muyan, her eyes sincere. Miss Jun is also a woman, so surely you know how important appearance is to a woman. If you were the one who got your face hurt, would you not be angry? But I was just angry for a moment and wanted to punish your young master. I definitely had no intention of killing him. Mu Yang's brows lightly raised, full of ridicule. Use the white jade purple frost powder as a small punishment to warn others? That's right. The white jade purple frost powder is highly toxic, but I am an alchemist as well as an alchemist. Shalanling shows a contemptuous and proud expression. When it comes to alchemy, I believe that there aren't many in the entire Yenwu continent who are better than me. After punishing the young master, I can naturally help him detoxify the poison of a mere white jade purple frost. Pausing, she looks at Di Mingju and says, "This is also the reason why I don't dare to use the draft that the little Gongzi gave me. Although Miss Jun is the newly famous Enchantress of medicine, when it comes to refining pills, I'm afraid she's still far from my level. Otherwise, you wouldn't have asked me to refine the golden pill of 9 orifices for you." After saying this, Shalanling sneers at the change in Muyan's expression. This kind of reminder is blatantly telling Muyan that she is far stronger than her in terms of alchemy and alchemy. So what if she hooked up with the emperor and gave birth to a bastard? When she was in the Ghost City, she didn't hear the news of Di Jun getting married. Han Yi also said that Jun Muyan was only the future mistress of the Emperor Garden. In other words, Di Mingju was only temporarily bewitched by this woman. As long as Jun Muyan and her son were eradicated, the position of Emperor Garden's mistress would still be hers. Shalanling's innate talent had been awe-inspiring since she was young, and her schemes were deep. If he knew what he wanted, he would get it even if he had to resort to any means necessary. Therefore, even though she was in a sorry state, her heart was filled with hatred. However, she also immediately adjusted her state, trying in vain to firmly suppress Muyan, making Di Mingju realize that she is the most suitable mistress of the Emperor Garden. Shalanling's words really make Mu Yang very unhappy. Because there was one sentence that Shalanling was right. She did not know how to concoct pills, and Di Mingju wants to refine the 9 orifices golden pill for her, but he has to find Shalanling. The dark cloud spirit flowers that she had painstakingly cultivated were all given to this woman. Everything made her feel as disgusted as if she had swallowed a fly. Shalanling sees the change in Muyan's expression, and a ruthless complacency flashes through her eyes. "I came here today to deliver the golden elixir of 9 orifices to you, Miss June." Who would have thought that she would encounter such an undeserved calamity and be disfigured? Although I can refine drafts to heal wounds, it would take at least 3 months for it to completely heal. She didn't finish her sentence, but the grievance and sadness in her words were clear. Those who didn't understand the cause and effect might really think that she was an innocent victim. Di Mingju feels Muyan's anger, and a murderous intent flashes through his eyes. He doesn't pay attention to Shalanling because in the entire Yenwu continent, besides Mu Yang and Xiao Bao, everyone else is like a stone or an ant to him. He simply doesn't need to pay attention to them, nor does he need to bother about them. But this woman actually attacked Xiao Bao, and even made Mu Yang unhappy. Then she might as well just die. However, Mu Yan suddenly pulls on his sleeve, and directly puts Xiao Bao into his arms. Chapter 368. One big and one small, the two of them look at each other in dismay, their expressions and movements unspeakably strange. At the side, Han Yi is even more dumbfounded. Jun Shong is actually holding a child. That's a real hug. Not carrying, but Muyan has already slowly walked in front of Shalanling. The corners of her mouth are slightly raised, her peach blossom eyes shimmering like water, like the clear radiance of the crescent moon, the snow-covered flowers and trees, so beautiful that it's suffocating. Shalanling's complexion suddenly freezes, her eyes shooting out a thick sense of jealousy. At this moment, she really wishes that she could scratch Muyan's face. Or, put this face on her own body. Shixianzi, you just said that it would take at least 3 months for the wound on your face to heal. Muyan doesn't seem to see the viciousness in Shalanling's eyes as she leisurely says, "But unfortunately, I just refined a kind of draft a few days ago. It would only take a quarter of an hour to heal after applying it on the wound. If the wound isn't deep, even the scar would disappear in 3 days at most." Hearing that, Shalanling couldn't help but sneer. "Miss Jun, you're not dreaming, are you? I've been refining elixirs for so many years, but I've never heard of a draft that can heal a person's wound in a quarter of an hour. Even if you want to brag about your abilities in front of Di Jun, you don't have to lie through your teeth, right?" Saying that, she even glances at Di Mingju. Unfortunately, Di Mingju is clumsily adjusting his posture while holding Xiao Bao. He doesn't even spare her a glance. Shalanling grits her teeth, raising her voice once again. "Miss Jun, you said that this draft can heal my wound in a quarter of an hour, but what if it can't? What if my injury worsens instead? At that time, could it be that I have to bear the pain of being disfigured with just a light apology from you?" Muyan chuckles and says, "If it can't be done, Shixianzi can also make the same 3 cuts on my face. What do you think?" Hearing this promise, Shalanling's eyes brighten at once. This is Jun Muyan bringing about her own destruction. When the time comes, even if she disfigured her face, she can't be blamed. "Alright, then I'll try Miss Jun's draft, and see how miraculous it is." Shalanling doesn't believe that there's really a draft in this world that can heal her wound in a quarter of an hour. Even if she were to refine the most expensive elixir, and then pair it with a draft for external application, it would still take at least 10 days. 15 minutes. Haha. Doesn't that mean that her wounds are healing at a speed visible to the naked eye? She wants to see how Jun Muyan will still have the face to seduce Di Mingju if she can't do it in a moment, and how will she face her disfigured self? Imagining such a comfortable future, Shalanling doesn't hesitate to take the draft that Muyan hands over. Without thinking, he smeared it on his wound. Because she was too excited and expectant, she didn't even notice that there were wisps of blue-green light twining around the bottle. White jade purple frost. The corner of Muyan's mouth hooks up into a faint and cold smile, and then slowly disappears. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. She would treat the wound caused by the fat rabbit's claw. She would naturally return the white jade purple frost that this woman wanted to use on Xiaobao. Didn't Shalanling say that she could casually solve a mere white jade purple frost? Hehe, then she would try to solve it. Chapter 369. Now, she didn't even feel that her swollen cheeks and bloody wounds were scary. Because after a while, a wound 10 times uglier than this one will be replicated on Muyan's face. However, a moment later, Shalanling suddenly felt that the wound on her face was a little itchy. She furrowed her brows and managed to stop herself from scratching it with her hands. However, that itch is getting worse and worse, making Shalanling almost suspect that Jun Muyan is deliberately harming her. Just when she could no longer resist the urge to scratch, Jun Muyan's unhurried voice floats into her ears. "Shixianzi, the wound will naturally be itchy and unbearable if it heals quickly. But in order to not leave a scar and affect the healing, I advise you to not use your hands to scratch it." Shalanling's hand stiffened. She was about to retort. How could it heal so quickly? Suddenly, her eyes widened as she stared at the glass mirror in front of her. The wound on her face was actually healing. It was really healing. Moreover, as time passed, the numbness and itchiness on his face became more and more intense, but the speed at which his wounds healed was also getting faster and faster. Shalanling didn't know how much time had passed, but it was definitely less than a quarter of an hour. The 3 scars on her face had already begun to scab. One strip even fell off, revealing new flesh underneath. But as Mu Yang said, although there were scars, they weren't deep. In less than 3 days, it would completely disappear. 15 minutes is up. Muyan curls up a strand of hair hanging by the side of her face, unhurriedly saying, "I wonder if Shixianzi is satisfied with the healing of her wounds." Shalanling's entire body stiffened. Her face was lifeless and overwhelmed with shock. She couldn't utter a single word. Ruizhu couldn't help but take a closer look. She couldn't help but shout, "Miss, your wound has really healed completely. How could this be? How could there be such a miraculous draft in this world?" Muyan sneers. She turns around and takes Xiao Bao from Di Mingju's arms and kisses him on the cheek. Humph, so what if you can refine pills? Even if she didn't know how to refine pills, she could still throw this woman 10 streets away. But thinking that the 9 orifices golden dan she ate was refined by this disgusting woman, Mu Yang was still very unhappy. Wasn't it just refining pills? She did not believe that she could not learn it. As soon as Xiao Bao is in Muyan's arms, he immediately hugs her neck and says in a crisp voice, "Nyangqin's draft is the most powerful." This intimate appearance is completely different from when she was in Di Mingju's arms. Han Yi mockingly looks at the absent-minded Shalanling. He didn't know if this woman was stupid or mentally ill. Why did he have to stick his face out to be slapped again and again? It's not enough for Jun Shong to beat him, he still wants to let little Gongzi beat him. The young master wasn't satisfied and wanted Miss Jun to hit him again. TSK, when a person starts acting cheap, there's really no saving him. Shixianzi, now that your wounds have healed, may I ask if there's anything else? If there's nothing else, please leave quickly. Our Emperor Garden does not allow outsiders to approach. Shalanling's body swayed, and she turned around to leave. But just as she was about to leave, Mu Yang suddenly said with a smile, "Oh, right, there's something I forgot to tell Shixianzi. Just now, when I had Shixianzi use the healing draft, I accidentally mixed in a wisp of white jade purple frost." Chapter 370. Saying that, without waiting for Shalanling's reaction, he carries Xiao Bao and directly walks into the Emperor Garden. The Emperor Garden's door slams shut, and Shalanling's eyes are all filled with horror. His body, which was already on the verge of collapsing, trembled in fear. White jade purple frost, that's a famous poison in the Yanwu continent. Who has the guts to say that they can easily cure it? Now that she's been poisoned by this white jade purple frost, could it be that her lifetime's cultivation is gone just like that? No. How could it be? Jun Muyan, you slut, how could you harm me like this? Jun Muyan. A hoarse roar mixed with bone-deep hatred spits out from Shalanling's mouth. Jun Muyan, I, Shalanling, swear that you will die without a burial ground. You want to go back to the Junji Medical Center? The man sitting at the desk slowly raises his head. There's no expression on his handsome face, but a pair of deep eyes are fixed on her. Muyan inexplicably feels that the heat in those eyes is somewhat astonishing. She also feels that the imposing manner of the man who has just raised his head carries an unfamiliar majesty. In fact, Muyan doesn't know what Di Mingju's identity is. But just by looking at his innate grace and nobility, as well as the look in his eyes that doesn't put any creature in the Yanwu continent in his eyes, she knows that this person's background must be extraordinary. Perhaps, it's not something that anyone in the Yanwu continent could bear. It's just that when Di Mingju is in front of her, he tends to show some childishness. Occasionally, he would even shamelessly act shamelessly. So much so that she often forgets that this man may have another side that she's completely unaware of. Ice-cold, powerful, aloof, just like an emperor who rules over the world. Muyan composes herself, then reins back her thoughts. That's right, I've already bothered you long enough. The Junji Medical Center can't be left unattended, and my subordinates are also waiting for me to return. I think it's time for me to leave. Di Mingju's eyes darken, and he slowly gets up. As the man approaches, Muyan feels a burning and dangerous aura. However, just as she's about to step back, the man's deep voice comes to her ears. Good, you can go back. Muyan is startled, and subconsciously raises her head. Agreed. The person who had imprisoned her here and refused to let her leave actually let her go so easily. The corner of Di Mingju's mouth hooks up into a shallow arc. What? Actually, you don't want to go. Without saying another word, Mu Yang turns around and leaves. However, when she was about to board the carriage with Xiaobao in her arms. He still couldn't help glancing over at the slowly closing Emperor Garden's gate. For some unknown reason, a trace of disappointment and loneliness surged into his heart. Mother! Xiaobao's voice resounded by her ear. It was clear and melodious, yet it carried a trace of loneliness. Isn't that person coming to see us off? even though she kept calling him a lecher and saying that she despised him. But when that person walked in front of that hateful woman and said, "This Lord's son is not someone you have the right to teach a lesson to," Xiao Bao felt his little heart thumping non-stop. A kind of pride and joy that he had never felt before welled up in his heart, making him flustered and bewildered. Even though the person he loves the most in the world is his mother, even though as long as he has his mother, he can do without anything. However, if Xiao Bao had a father, would he be like that person? Chapter 371. In the end, Di Mingju didn't come out, not even to send them off. The carriage the Emperor Garden had prepared for them was very large. The spacious space was more than enough to accommodate 7 or 8 people. There was even a bed at the back of the carriage so that Mu Yang and Xiao Bao could take a nap during the journey. Mu Yang thinks that she should let Xiao Bao sleep on the road. When they arrive at the Junji Medical Center, perhaps Xiao Bao won't be so disappointed. She would not be reluctant to part with that man. She sighed softly, opened the carriage door, and was about to enter. His gaze suddenly fell on the figure on the bed, and he was instantly dumbfounded. Di Mingju? Mu Yang unconsciously raises her voice. Why are you here? Di Mingju is reclining on the bed, his posture languid, his entire person brimming with seductive charm. His voice was so deep and magnetic that it could make people's ears pregnant. This is Ben Jun's carriage. Why can't Ben Jun be here? No one knew who had closed the door of the carriage. With a creaking sound, the inside of the carriage became an enclosed space. The originally spacious carriage suddenly became extremely crowded. This was because almost every inch of the air was filled with the domineering aura of the man. Muyan composes herself, and says with a hollow laugh, "How could it be good to have Jun Shong send us back? Jun Shong, you'd better return." Di Mingju lifts his eyelids, lightly turning a page of the book in his hand. "Ben Jun didn't want to send you back. Then why did you come in?" Di Mingju turns another page of the book, his expression unspeakably natural. "Didn't you say you wanted to go home? This monarch will naturally go back with you." Saying that, he raised his eyes to look at Mu Yang and Xiao Bao. "Our family is together, how can we be separated?" Mu Yang, "I'd be a fool to believe you. Whose family with you?" Even little Bao's large and glistening blue eyes were opened wide as if she was complaining about his shamelessness. However, before the two of them could say anything, Di Mingju's slender fingers turn another page of the book. Just then, a thin piece of paper floated out of the book and landed on the ground. Mu Yang stares blankly, her line of sight shifts from that piece of paper to the book in Di Mingju's hands. Then, she made a shocking discovery. That book was in her space. Why did it fall into Di Mingju's hands? Could it be that she had taken the book out of the space and forgotten to put it back? Just as Mu Yang had this doubt in her mind, her attention was immediately attracted by the paper that was floating down. Only to see that Di Mingju is also slightly astonished. He stoops down to pick up the folded paper from the ground, slowly unfolding it. As the paper unfolds, a spark suddenly flashes through Muyan's mind. He finally remembered what this piece of paper was. His expression changed. "Don't open it." However, her words were still too late. Di Mingju unfolds the paper and sees the man reclining on the couch, his clothes half undone. He raises his eyebrows with interest. The corners of his mouth curled up into a joyful and deep arc. He turns the paper in his hand to face Mu Yang and Xiao Bao. "I didn't expect that you, Mu Yang, would actually be so obsessed with Ben Jun." Mu Yang's face burns fiercely. Even his son, who was in his arms, looked at him curiously. This painting is naturally the half-fortune and half-fruit painting that she made for Di Mingju. After she was done, she thought about tearing the painting up or throwing it away. Chapter 372. Muyan couldn't bear to throw it away, but she felt uncomfortable keeping it, so she folded it and placed it between the pages of the book. How could she have thought that Di Mingju would take her book, and as luck would have it, it's the one with the painting. But what kind of person was Mu Yang? Her panic only lasted for a moment before a faint smile appeared on her beautiful face. In the eyes of a painter, there is no difference between men and women, only whether a model is perfect or not. Jun Shong's appearance and figure are one in a million. After I entered the painting, I would occasionally take it out to admire it. Is there anything strange about that? Upon hearing this, Xiaobao immediately nodded. Nyang Qin also drew nude pictures of Liu Beiyu's bodyguards and the people of the ink camp. What's so strange about adding another lecture? In the future, when he grows up and becomes strong and tall, he will also let his mother draw for him. Di Mingju's complexion stiffens, and he somewhat gnashes his teeth. This heartless woman. Could it be that in her eyes, Ben Juanshang is the same as her subordinates? Especially when he remembers the scene when he took Mu Yan away that day. More than a dozen men bare their chests and bellies in front of Mu Yang, and one of them even looks at him with a burning gaze. As soon as he thought of such a scene, Di Mingju couldn't wait to lock Yang Kai back into the Emperor Garden. Mu Yang sees that the man has suffered a setback, and her mood is finally at ease. She carried Xiaobao and sat down on the bed. Before she could retract her smile, the man's tall figure suddenly approached her. He pressed Xiaobao against the wall of the carriage. A scorching breath blows on Mu Yan's face. Ben Jun dares to guarantee that after drawing Ben Jun's body, you will never look at another man's body again. Mu Yan, Ben Jun believes that from now on, you will no longer be able to lift your brush to paint like this. Unless the subject of your painting is me. The man's voice was resolute and decisive, and his voice contained an infuriating confidence. The veins on Mu Yang's forehead are throbbing, and she really wants to spit it back. However, she sadly realized that she couldn't refute him. After seeing Di Mingju's perfect body, if she were to draw another man's naked body, she really couldn't bring herself to do it. Damn it! This bastard really hit the nail on the head. As the three people go back and forth, the carriage returns to Chenyuan City, stopping in front of the Junji Medical Center. Such a large and luxurious carriage appearing in the Junji Medical Center very quickly attracts the onlookers inside and outside the medical center. Although Mu Yan has been missing for 7 days, the Junji Medical Center is still operating normally. It's just that if Mu Yan doesn't come, then the Junji Medical Center would lose its original advantage. One day, it would be squeezed out by other medical centers. Therefore, when he sees Mu Yang leading Xiaobao down from the carriage, whether it's the doctors or the patients in the Junji Medical Center, they all let out a cheer. Some of them came forward to welcome him, while others went in to call for help. In just a moment, a few figures rushed out like the wind. Miss. Young Master. Yang Yang. Before Mu Yang can react, she is hugged by someone. Shun Jinglin grabs her and looks her up and down for a while. After making sure that she's all right, he breathes a sigh of relief. Yang Yang, where did you go? Why did you leave for so long? Do you know how worried I am? There's also Xiao Bao. He said that you told him to go find you. Such a small child, how could you let him act alone? Brother knows that you're all very powerful, but... As soon as Shun Jinglin sees Mu Yang, he starts to fire off a barrage of criticism. Chapter 373. Brother, I know I was wrong. Mu Yan grabs Shun Jinglin's hand and shakes it. Her face has a rare naive look like a young girl throwing a tantrum. Don't worry, how could I allow myself and Xiao Bao to fall into danger? Ever since he was a child, Shun Jinglin couldn't do anything to his most precious little sister. So even though he's been on tenterhooks for 7 days, he can only dotingly tap her forehead, his face helpless. But this time, without waiting for Shun Jinglin to move Mu Yan's collar, is suddenly pulled by someone. She bumps straight into a hard embrace. Immediately after, the originally noisy entrance of the clinic immediately falls into a deathly silence, so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. Everyone's gazes are fixed on the person behind Mu Yan. Under the heavens, how could such a good-looking man grow up? Jade-like, extraordinarily handsome, and elegant, these kinds of adjectives seem to tarnish his temperament when used on him. The man is like a handsome and aloof god. Wherever he stands, that's where the throne of supremacy is. Shun Jinglin blankly stares at this man who carries his little sister away, and then embraces her body, each and every movement declaring his ownership. He only feels that his breathing has stopped. His mouth is slightly open, and he can't say a word for a long time. Yang Yang, this is... Mu Yan glares at Di Mingju. Does this man dare to grab her in another way? Every time he grabs her and Xiao Bao's collars, does he think they're sacks? Di Mingju's reaction is to tighten his grip on her waist, clearly declaring his ownership. This one is Di Mingju, Muyan's fiancé. The man's voice is low and cold, but it's like a muffled thunder, smashing in the middle of everyone. Fiancé? Shun Jinglin suddenly raises his voice. When did you have a fiancé? Brother, don't listen to his nonsense. I didn't, Before Muyan could finish her words, the man pinches her chin, raises his head, and seals her little mouth. After a moment, Di Mingju releases her, and carelessly says, Yang Yang, you and I have already had intimate skin contact, bathing together like mandarin ducks. Don't tell me you still want to be irresponsible. The veins on Muyan's forehead bulge. Go to hell with your skin-to-skin contact and bathing together. You make it sound like the two of them have already done that. All she did was draw a painting of Bangua, take off a few of his clothes, and soak in the hot spring pool together. That was all. Mu Yang felt that she couldn't think about it anymore. If these words were spoken, not only would they not be able to clarify the situation, her brother would even force them to get married immediately. Shun Jinglin looked at the scene in front of him and his body swayed. You, already. Shun Jinglin stutters for a long time, then he suddenly glares at Di Mingju. How dare you make a move on my little sister? How dare you? How dare you be so intimate with my little sister in public? I'll kill you, you lecher. Shun Jinglin was really anxious at this time. Anyone who saw their cute and obedient little sister being taken advantage of by a pig would be shocked. Moreover, it was in front of a large crowd. This was intolerable. He clenches his fist, concentrating 100% of his profound energy in the palm of his hand, and fiercely punches towards Di Mingju. However, that fist that can shatter mountains and split rocks arrives in front of Di Mingju. But he easily catches it. The man in front of him clearly didn't use any force, there's not even a fluctuation of mysterious energy around him. Chapter 374. There was nothing to focus on, and there was no direction to attack. But unfortunately, his hand was controlled by this void, and his profound strength seemed to have been sealed, unable to be used in the slightest. Shun Jinglin looks up at Di Mingju in shock. This man was so strong, he was even stronger than his sister. Then, he couldn't help but look at the two people who were extremely close to him. It was truly a match made in heaven and earth, unparalleled. Shun Jinglin vaguely had an illusion that in this world, there was only one man who could stand by her younger sister's side and not be overshadowed. And vice versa. Di Mingju releases Shun Jinglin's hand. The haughtiness and nobility on his body receded a little. I also think that it's very irresponsible of me to have a physical relationship without the permission of my parents or the words of a matchmaker. As long as Muyan is willing, Ben Jun is willing to make it up at any time. Shun Jinglin was startled. You mean, you want to marry my younger sister? Of course. As long as Yang Yang is willing, the wedding can be held at any time. Saying that, he looks down at Muyan, or is it to say, Yang Yang, you're not willing to take responsibility for Ben Jun? Mu Yang grinds her teeth. This bastard, can he be any more shameless? And who are you calling Yang Yang? Do I know you that well? In the end, Jun Shongdaran relies on his thick skin and peerless appearance to successfully move into the Junji Medical Center's backyard. Moreover, the location of the room was close to Mu Yang and Xiao Bao's. Mu Yang repeatedly assures Shun Jinglin that she and Di Mingju are innocent, and she doesn't intend to get married for the time being. Shun Jinglin hesitantly walked away. Before leaving, he's still nagging, Yang Yang, even if you really like that person, you must still carefully investigate him. You mustn't casually marry him. What if you trusted the wrong person and met an evil person like Jingya, then you? Mu Yang raises the corner of her mouth, revealing a gentle smile, then I'll completely cripple him. Shun Jinglin shuddered. He had almost forgotten how valiant his sister was. How could there be a man in this world who could bully Yang Yang? Muyan only breathes a sigh of relief after Shun Jinglin leaves. Her brother was becoming more and more like a nanny. His incessant interrogation was almost unbearable. However, even though he could not withstand it, amidst such troubles, there was even more sweetness. Because only those who truly cared about you would care about you over and over again, worry about your happiness, anger, sorrow, and happiness, and worry about your future. Mu Yang caught her breath and saw that Xiaobao was already a little drowsy in her arms. She then sent him into the space and placed him together with the fat rabbit, who was sleeping soundly on his back. He then returned to the front hall and summoned Yang Haotian, Feng Haitang, Yu Yang, Old Dao, Chang Yu, Chen Qingfeng, and the others. Has anything happened in the past few days? Yu Yang bowed and answered, everything is as usual in the medical center these days. However, Mr. Yang said that there seemed to be unfamiliar powerhouses appearing in the vicinity of the medical center. Their origins and goals are unknown. Mu Yang looks at Yang Haotian. Yang Haotian raised his hand and made a few hand gestures. Some of them have higher cultivation bases than me and Old Dao. We're no match for them. Mu Yang slightly frowns. Maybe Qian Qing had received news that the poison man and his disciple had been killed, and so he had sent someone to investigate. Chapter 375. When Yu Yang and the others see so many drafts, they all reveal looks of pleasant surprise. During this period of time, whether it's the Tianji unit or the ink camp, the drafts have pretty much been consumed. And the draft that Muyan refines is unique. It was impossible to go to the pharmacy outside to restock. Yu Yang and Yang Haotian are worried about what to do with the training of the Tianji unit and the ink camp. Now that Muyan has given them so many special drafts, how could they not be happy? Right, where's Liu Beiyu? Why don't I see him? Mu Yang suddenly asked. Reporting to Miss, Yu Yang bowed and said, the Third Highness has not returned since he left yesterday. Mu Yang looks up in astonishment. Because before you disappeared, Miss, you mentioned that in order to treat the Third Prince's eldest brother, you might need a lot of rare herbs. Therefore, during this period of time, His Highness has been wandering around various large pharmacies. If there's someone in the Junji Medical Center who has the most confidence in Mu Yang and Xiao Bao, then it's definitely Liu Beiyu. The others were more or less worried about whether Mu Yang would suffer a loss, whether Xiao Bao would be abducted on the road. But Liu Beiyu firmly believes, what kind of people are master and little brother? Anyone who wanted to harm them in this world would definitely be beaten until half of their body was paralyzed, and they would be in an incomparably miserable state. I just have to wait here obediently, collect the medicinal herbs, and wait for Master to come back to save my big brother. Yu Yang thought of Liu Beiyu's calmness and self-confidence and couldn't help but sigh in her heart. This Kai Yang country's Third Highness clearly doesn't have the strength to truss a chicken, but he can become the Mrs. Apprentice and the Little Master's approved junior brother. There's really a reason for that. But you don't have to worry, Miss Yu Yang promptly adds. When His Highness left, he brought bodyguards with him, and there were also 2 people from the ink camp following him. However, in Tianyuan City, there shouldn't be any danger. Mu Yang slightly frowns, then nods. Her stupid disciple wouldn't be so unlucky as to fall into someone's hands, right? Although the Emperor Garden's layout was luxurious and comfortable, it was still not as good as his own home. That night, Mu Yang and Xiao Bao slept soundly. Xiao Bao's cheeks were rosy. Although there was no expression on his little face, his eyes were especially bright and moist. But today, Xiao Bao sticks to Mu Yang even more than usual. While Mu Yang was washing up, he was also hugging her thigh, looking up at her. As if he was afraid that his mother would disappear again. When it's time to eat, he gets tired of Mu Yang's embrace and lets Mu Yang feed him. Since Mu Yan hasn't seen Xiao Bao for 7 days, her longing for him will not lessen by even a little. Not only did he not reject Xiao Bao's clinginess, but he was also very happy. The two are like this, you feed me a mouthful, I feed you a spoonful. During this time, Mu Yan has to lower her head and kiss Xiao Bao's little face. Then, Xiao Bao blushed and kissed Mu Yan on the cheek. It was extremely sticky. When Di Ming Ju comes in, he sees this scene. The sea of vinegar in his heart turns the sky and the earth upside down on the spot. He strode forward, grabbed Xiao Bao by the collar, and lifted him up. Let me go! Xiao Bao screams in anger, using both his hands and feet to struggle free. But his hands and legs are short, how can he break free from Di Ming Ju? Muyan promptly reaches out to snatch him back. Di Mingju, let go of my son. But Di Mingju turns a deaf ear, coldly looking at Xiao Bao. Finished eating breakfast? Chapter 376. After you're done eating, go to the backyard and cultivate. Di Mingju unhurriedly says in a mocking tone, didn't you say that you would become stronger in the future and protect your mother? Is this how you protect her now? Xiaobao's face went stiff, and the anger on his face faded away. However, he was still stubborn. I don't need you to tell me that. I'll train myself, and one day, I'll be stronger than you. Hehe, not bad. He loosened his grip, and Xiaobao fell to the ground. However, he didn't pester Mu Yang like before. Instead, he glanced at Mu Yang. Mother, Xiaobao is going to cultivate. After saying that, he strode towards the backyard. Mu Yang looks at his small and lonely figure and feels a little distressed. Her Xiaobao was only 4 years old. Other 4-year-old children were still acting like spoiled children in their parents' arms, but he had to bear so much. But in the end, she said nothing. Instead, he watches as that little figure arrives at the backyard, and methodically begins to practice the martial skill that Di Mingju gave him. Mu Yang isn't someone who can't tell good from bad. She can see that the martial skill that Di Mingju gave Xiao Bao looks ordinary, but as he cultivates it, the mysterious energy within Xiao Bao's body is being purified and refined little by little. His cultivation did not increase rapidly, but his foundation became more and more stable. Although Xiao Bao's cultivation was still at the mid-heaven tier, his true strength had already surpassed Shalanling, who was also at the mid-heaven tier. And all of this was done by Di Mingju in secret, quietly for the sake of her and her mother. Mu Yang. A deep male voice comes from behind her. Mu Yang turns around, only to see that Di Mingju is already leisurely sitting at the table, her and Xiao Bao's original position. Seeing Di Mingju slowly handing over the chopsticks, Mu Yang shows a puzzled expression. In the next moment, she hears the man use his magnetic and alluring voice to slowly say, a family of 3, Muyan, you can't favor one and discriminate against the other. Favoritism? Favoritism? Mu Yang stares blankly at first, then she realizes what this man is saying. Was he implying that she had fed and kissed Xiao Bao, so she had to feed and kiss him as well? Fuck. Could this man be any more shameless? After an indescribable breakfast, Xiao Bao also finished his cultivation and returned to Mu Yang's side. His little face was flushed, and there were beads of sweat on his forehead. He was panting slightly, but his big eyes were full of excitement. The reason for that was because Xiao Bao could sense that his strength was truly growing stronger every time he cultivated a martial skill. One day, he will be able to protect his mother. Mu Yang wipes the sweat from his face, her eyes are indescribably gentle. Xiao Bao is really great, Nyang Qin will take you to take a bath, okay? Xiao Bao nodded heavily. However, before Mu Yang could hold Xiao Bao's hand, Xiao Bao's small body has already soared into the air, and is held in Di Mingju's arms. This time, Zhun Shong's posture of holding the child has become very standard. Unfortunately, Xiao Bao didn't appreciate it. He struggled angrily, let me go, I want to be with mother. You're a real man, and you still want your mother to bathe you. Di Mingju unhurriedly spits out a sentence. In an instant, little Bao's shouts were silenced. But thinking of his mother using gentle movements to scrub his back and wash his hair, Xiao Bao was somewhat unwilling. Her small hands can't help but stretch out in Mu Yan's direction. Mu Yang promptly reaches out to hug him. Xiao Bao is still so young, what's wrong with me bathing him? Di Mingju, let go, let me hold him. Chapter 377. An affectionate mother spoils her son. In the future, when we have a daughter, have a daughter. Mu Yan is completely stupefied. By the time she comes back to herself, Di Mingju has already carried Xiao Bao away. She almost spits out a mouthful of old blood from her chest. Scoundrel, who wants to have a daughter with you? Di Mingju carries Xiao Bao through the corridor and the crowd, heading towards the bath in the courtyard. Xiao Bao still wants to struggle. Di Mingju says, you've made good progress these days. That palm against Shalanling, you didn't lose my face. Xiao Bao's struggling movements stop. His little face is already taut, but there's an inexplicable pride and joy bubbling in his heart. This is the first time this man has praised him. Although he doesn't want to admit it, he feels very happy. Defying continues, "The martial technique I'm teaching you is only the most basic one. If you can reach the 10th rank within 10 days, I'll teach you a more profound one, and I'll also give you a storage ring as a reward." Xiao Bao's eyes are bright, staring straight at Defying. Really? In fact, he really wants a storage space like Enchantress. That way, he can go out alone to collect treasures and herbs, and then come back to give them to Enchantress. Enchantress originally wanted to give Defying to her, to Xiao Bao. But Xiao Bao refuses. Although he's young, he knows how serious the consequences would be if the Tianmo Qin space were to be known. Enchantress can use this storage ring as a cover. How could he take it? But now, this person says that he will give one to him. Defying carelessly says, "Of course it's true, but you're already a man. You're not allowed to stick to your Enchantress all the time." Xiao Bao immediately looks at him with a contemptuous gaze. "I knew it, you're up to no good, you just want to dominate my Enchantress. Your Enchantress is mine." "Nonsense, Enchantress is mine." The two quarrel all the way to the bath. Han Yi and Ying Mai, who were originally guarding outside the courtyard, are already numb from shock when they see this scene. Ever since they got to know Miss Jun, it's already common for their Jun Shong to do things that he wouldn't do. Now, not only has Jun Shong learned to hold a child, his movements are also very skilled. They would even argue with children in a very childish manner. If this scene were to be seen by those people from the polar domain, the scene would be too beautiful, unimaginable. Chang Yu stands not too far away, watching the scene of Defying and Xiao Bao getting along harmoniously. After staring blankly for a long time, he lowered his eyes to hide the pain and loneliness in them. The scene of the man and the young lady standing together appeared in his mind again. That kind of beauty, that kind of match, only this kind of man is worthy of Miss, right? Chang Yu laughed at himself. Then, all the expressions on his face disappeared, leaving behind only determination and calmness. Hadn't he already decided to stay by Mrs. side? As for that kind of lowly feeling, it was something that he shouldn't have. He had long decided to bury it at the bottom of his heart. Don't let anyone know. As long as he could still protect the young miss and the young master from afar, it was enough. After Xiao Bao and Defying leave, Muyan still plans to go out and look for her stupid apprentice. After advancing to high levels Yantian realm, Mu Yang could feel that her strength had increased by a large margin. Moreover, for some reason, she felt that there was a restless energy in her body. Chapter 378. Mu Yang didn't alarm anyone when she left. Even Ying Mai and Han Yi, who were guarding her, didn't discover her whereabouts. Going outside, apart from looking for stupid apprentices, Mu Yang also wants to collect some materials for alchemy. She admits that she was stimulated by the matter of Defying asking Shi Lanling to do alchemy. She originally didn't plan to do alchemy anymore after the furnace explosion last time. But now, she decides to give it a try again. Isn't it just alchemy? She doesn't believe that she can't do it. However, not long after Mu Yang steps onto the street, she discovers that she's being followed. She raises her eyebrows, casually strolls through a few medicine shops, and eventually walks into a remote and deserted alley. "Greetings, Miss June." The moment Mu Yang entered the alley, a few figures silently landed in front of her. Seeing them, Mu Yang raises her eyebrows in surprise. As Yang Haotian said, these people's cultivation is very high. They're at least at the peak of Earth stage, and quite a few have even reached Heaven stage. It's no wonder that Yu Yang and the others are deeply worried. It's just that these people's attitude towards her doesn't seem to be something that Chen Qing's subordinates would have. Mu Yang raises her eyebrows. "You followed me all the way, what exactly do you want to do?" The leader is a chubby, kind-looking middle-aged man in embroidered robes. He looks very harmless, but Mu Yang knows that this person has the highest cultivation among this group of black-clothed people. He takes a step forward and slightly salutes Mu Yang. "Miss Jun, my Wang Ye invites you. I hope that Miss Jun will come back with us." "You're Wang Ye?" Mu Yang is surprised. Sure enough, it's not Chen Qing, but when did she know Wang Ye? The middle-aged man in embroidered robes shows a hint of pride on his face, but his expression is still gentle, even humble. My Wang Ye is Huang Yarrow Country's Jin Wang Ye. I've admired Mrs. Good Name for a long time, and hope to see your face. Huang Yarrow Country's Jin Wang Ye? Mu Yang frowns. This name seems somewhat familiar, but she can't remember it for a while. She hears the middle-aged man in embroidered robes continue. The last time you proposed, it was Steward's son who acted on his own initiative, causing Miss to suffer grievances. Even if he died, he only had himself to blame, and no one could blame him. But my family's prince's love for you can be seen by the heaven and earth, you must not misunderstand him. Hearing Steward's son's marriage proposal, Muyan's memory finally recovers. Oh, so it was that prince who wanted to marry her as a concubine. In the end, that guy Di Ming Ju just happened to come looking for her, and his neck was magnificently broken. The shock that Di Ming Ju gave her at that time was so deep that she forgot that a Wang Ye had once proposed marriage to her. Seeing Mu Yang's sudden realization, the middle-aged man's expression could not help but stiffen. Jin Wang Ye of Huang Yarrow Country, that is an outstanding and famous figure in the entire Yanwu continent. What kind of woman wasn't easy for him to get? Moreover, after he usually takes a fancy to a woman, Jin Wang Ye would turn his head and get tired of playing with her, throwing her to the back of his mind. But this Miss Jun was a complete exception. Not a single one of the teams that the prince had sent out to ask for her hand in marriage had returned. They had disappeared without a trace. It took them a long time to find out that that group of people had died, and they had died in Junji drugstore. Then there was their prince's obsession with Miss June. At first, he only searched for beauties. Chapter 379. Unfortunately, this Miss Jun has completely forgotten about their Wang Ye's marriage proposal. But what kind of person is this embroidered middle-aged man? What kind of great winds and waves has he not seen? He quickly adjusts his expression, and says with a smile, Miss Jun, we have come with full sincerity to invite you to the Fu for a chat. Please don't refuse. Muyan looks at them with a smile that isn't a smile. What if I insist on refusing? The middle-aged man's eyes deepen, his tone becoming more and more respectful. But the words he says make Muyan frown for the first time. Our Wang Ye has taken a fancy to Miss June. In any case, we wouldn't dare to make a move against Miss, but there's one thing that I hope Miss Jun knows. Our Wang Ye has always been on good terms with Kai Yang's royal family. This time, we accidentally ran into Kai Yang's Third Highness, so we specifically invited him to Jin Wangfu to have a good chat with Wang Ye. Muyan's eyes slowly narrow, her whole body emitting a dangerous light. You've caught Liu Beiyu. In her heart, she can't help but lament for this stupid apprentice. What kind of fate is this? Getting caught at every turn, threatened, or even made a cuckold. This stupid apprentice's 8 characters shouldn't be innately evil, right? Seeing Muyan's expression, the middle-aged man can't help but laugh. How could it be called a capture? We're just inviting His Highness to be a guest, that's all. Of course, if Miss Jun doesn't want to go back with us, then whether His Highness is a guest or a prisoner, this one doesn't dare to guarantee. Muyan's eyes focus, and her figure suddenly disappears. The middle-aged man's expression changes. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, he only feels a breeze brushing past his face. The next moment, a hand as white as jade has already gently pinched his neck. The middle-aged man widens his eyes in horror, looking at the beautiful face that's within reach, his face full of disbelief. When did she come over? Why didn't he see her movements clearly just now? The middle-aged man instinctively operates the mysterious energy within his body, wanting to fight back. He's a strong person at the peak of heaven stage. It's reasonable to say that Jun Muyan, a girl who's not even in her 20s, can't possibly be his opponent. But when he operates his mysterious energy, he shockingly finds that his mysterious energy seems to be sucked away by a huge force. Like a clay ox entering the sea, it disappeared without a trace. The shock in the middle-aged man's heart was like a monstrous tidal wave. Who is this Jun Muyan? Could he be stronger than her? A young girl was stronger than him. What kind of cultivation was that? Could it be innate stage? How was this possible? With such talent, isn't she 10,000 times more powerful than Jing Cheng country's Princess Qianxue? The middle-aged man was bewildered and couldn't help but want to gather his dark force and counterattack again. However, the hands around his neck suddenly let go. The girl's figure suddenly retreated like a cloud of smoke, and then leisurely stood still. All right, I have no choice but to accept your threat. I'll follow you back to Huang Yarrow country. The middle-aged man stares blankly, looking at Muyan in disbelief. An ominous premonition arose in his heart. If Jin Wangye insists on marrying this woman, wouldn't it be the arrival of a catastrophe instead? But very quickly, he shook his head and shook off this thought, bowing and saying, Miss Jun, please, the carriage is already waiting at the entrance of the alley. From here to Huang Yarrow country, it will take us at most 3 days to reach there. The author has something to say. Chapter 380. Muyan slowly nods, her long eyelashes drooping down. She looks like a weak and harmless girl, too weak to stand up to the wind. What kind of great threat is there? The middle-aged man immediately throws that ominous thought to the back of his mind. A less than 20 years old pre-celestial, how is that possible? His eyes must have been blurred just now, and his senses must have made a mistake. That's why he had such an absurd idea. The middle-aged man lets people escort Muyan to the carriage, and he takes his men to clean up the traces left behind. According to the information investigated, there is a very powerful man at Muyan's side. Steward's son was killed by that man. Although Jin Wangye's Fu isn't afraid of anyone, it's better to have less trouble. As long as Wangye and Miss Jun are married, what's done is done, what's done is done. Even if Miss Jun had a lover before, what's the matter? It's not the first time that his Wangye has snatched a woman from another man. Things that are snatched are always especially interesting. After cleaning up all the traces, the middle-aged man complacently leaves with his men. The whole alley is quiet, as if no one has been there. Jin Wangfu. Wangye, don't drive us away, we are willing to serve you for the rest of our lives. Wangye, I beg you. Wangye, the sun and moon can attest to Xiangxiang's feelings for you. How can Xiangxiang live without you? Even if a new Wangfei enters the door, we will be obedient and not make the new Wangfei unhappy. I beg Wangye, don't drive us away. Woo woo. Outside the courtyard, the sound of several women's heartbroken cries can be heard. But inside the room, a tall and handsome man is leaning on the bed, holding a cup of wine in his hand and sipping tea. There's not a trace of emotion on his face. Jin Wangye, didn't you hear that your lovely wife and beautiful concubine are sobbing, reluctant to part with you? You actually have a heart of stone, you don't know how to have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. Not far from the man, sits a handsome youth. If Muyan were here, she would certainly recognize that this person is Liu Beiyu, who has been missing for several days. And the man on the bed is naturally Jin Wangye of Huang Yarrow country. Listening to Liu Beiyu's words, Jin Wangye chuckles. How can these vulgar women be compared to Muyan? If Ben Wang doesn't drive these people out, how can I show my determination to marry Muyan? Stop dreaming. Liu Beiyu could no longer control his emotions. With a flushed face, he angrily says, how could my master marry someone like you? You're practically a toad lusting after swan meat. Being provoked like this, Jin Wangye's eyes flash with a trace of obvious indignation. However, it very quickly turns into an invasion overflowing with interest. The harder it is to obtain a woman, the more interested this prince is. Not to mention a woman like Jun Muyan, who can refine godly drafts, a woman of the highest quality that can revive the dead and regrow flesh and bones. Liu Beiyu clenches his teeth and says, do you think that just relying on Jin Wangfu's trash, they can take my master away? I know that Jun Muyan's cultivation isn't low. Jin Wangye smiles meaningfully, but don't I still have you in my hands? You're Jun Muyan's only disciple. Knowing that her disciple is in trouble, tell me, would she not come to save you? You want to use me to threaten master? Liu Beiyu gets so angry that he suddenly stands up, the tea in his hand ruthlessly splashing towards Jin Wangye. However, a white shadow flashed before his eyes. Chapter 381. Lu Beiyu glares at the man blocking in front of Jin Wangye. He sees that his expression is cold, but his face is incomparably handsome, gentle like jade. The temperament around him makes people feel like they can't take their eyes off him. The person in front of him is actually the former #1 genius of Yanwu continent, the dustless swordsman, Bai Yichen. Lu Beiyu can't understand it. How could the world's #1 gongzi be reduced to Jin Wangye's lackey? Lu Beiyu, seeing that you're her apprentice, I won't kill you. But you'd better obediently stay here and participate in Ben Wang and Mu Yang's wedding. Otherwise, don't blame Ben Wang for making you wish you were dead, unable to die. Lu Beiyu's actions clearly make Jin Wangye angry. He waves his hand and says, Bai Yichen, take him away and keep a good watch over him. He must not be allowed to run away. When Mu Yang arrives, she can't find out where he is. Bai Yichen gives a slight bow, his voice faint. Yes, Wangye. Then, regardless of Lu Beiyu's ruckus, he directly carries him away. Walking out of the entrance of the Wangfu, a cold glint flashes through Bai Yichen's eyes. In the end, all the women of Jin Wangfu are dragged out. The Wangfu that was originally crammed full of orioles and swallows is suddenly emptied out. The servants serving in the Wangfu have all heard that Wangye is doing all this in order to welcome the real Jin Wangfei. And the identity of this Jin Wangfei simply makes the maids and guards of the Wangfu extremely curious. It should be known that Jin Wangye has been a tyrant for so many years. When has he not been surrounded by orioles and swallows, embracing women on his left and right? How could he possibly dismiss his concubines for a woman? What is this Wangfei's identity? Could it be that she's a princess from some country? What's a princess? Even Gong Chenxue, the #1 genius of Yanwu continent, can't be compared to our new Wangfei. Who is the new Wangfei? Do you know about the filter of barrier breaking that's currently being auctioned at a sky-high price in the Ghost City? Of course I know. I heard that it can't be bought even with 10 million gold coins. That draft was refined by our new Wangfei. Also, that Enchantress, who is currently in the limelight in Tianyuan City, is also our new Wangfei. Everyone who heard the news was shocked beyond words. Thus, when the carriages arrived at the main gate, many maids and manservants couldn't help but sneak out to take a look. The curtain of the carriage was lifted. A young girl in a plain blue dress slowly walked down. The moment they see her, whether it's Jin Wangye, who is standing at the door to greet them, the guards behind him, or the servants hiding in the shadows, all of them simultaneously suck in a mouthful of cold air. So beautiful. Captivating birds and beasts, overshadowing the moon and putting flowers to shame, these words were not enough to describe this girl's exceptional beauty. Someone even thought to himself. It's no wonder that Jin Wangye dismissed his concubines. After seeing such a stunning woman, how could other common rouge and powder enter his eyes? After being stunned and infatuated, Jin Wangye suddenly comes back to his senses. He takes 2 or 3 steps forward to grab Mu Yang's hand. Mu Yang, Ben Wang has finally waited for you. Mu Yang unhurriedly takes a step back. The range of his movements isn't big, but he manages to avoid Jin Wangye's hand. She looked at the man in front of her nonchalantly and sneered, "Excuse me, who are you? I don't think I know you that well. Are you allowed to call Mu Yang?" Gah! Chapter 382. Is there something wrong with this girl's head? She actually dares to be this disrespectful to their Wangye? Doesn't she know that Jin Wangye is famous for being temperamental, ruthless? Jin Wangye's handsome face distorts for a moment. A man immediately steps forward from behind him, angrily saying, "How dare you? This is Huang Yaro's Jin Wangye, how can you be so presumptuous?" "So you're Jin Wangye?" Muyan raises her eyebrows. "So, you're saying that you captured my apprentice and threatened me to come here?" The girl's voice is like a silver bell, with traces of clear jade and ice crystals. Listening to it, it makes people's hearts melt. Jin Wangye once again reveals what he considers to be a gentle and refined smile. "Ben Wang invited Muyan here because I admire you, and hope to live together with you. How could it be a threat? Live together?" Muyan sneers. "You want me to be your side consort, live together?" Jin Wangye's face immediately shows deep affection. He steps forward, wanting to pull Muyan into his embrace. I won't hide it from you, ever since Ben Wang saw Muyan, I've been captivated and couldn't forget her. In Ben Wang's eyes, the rest of the common rouge and powder are already unable to enter. Marrying you as a side consort was just my housekeeper acting on his own initiative. The sun and moon can attest to Muyan's heart. For you, Ben Wang has dismissed all the women in Jin Wangfu. Our wedding will be arranged in 7 days. At that time, you will be Ben Wang's official Wangfei. Once you and I are married, Ben Wang will take you into the palace to meet my imperial brother. Although you're only from the lowest small country, Kai Yang, as long as you show off your talents in alchemy and medicine, I believe that my Huang Yaro country would also be willing to recognize your identity as Jin Wangfei. For a commoner woman from the lowest Kai Yang country becoming a Wangfei recognized by the emperor of Huang Yaro country is tantamount to reaching the sky in a single bound. When he says these words, Jin Wangye has great confidence that Muyan will shed tears of gratitude. With a pleasantly surprised face, she throws herself into his embrace, turning into a soft embrace. There's an aloof expression in his eyes, as if he's giving alms. He thinks that he's doing Muyan a huge favor. But Muyan can't help but burst out laughing. Although the girl's smile was as bright as a flower. However, the ridicule and contempt in that smile makes Jin Wangye's face distort once again. And Muyan's next sentence makes his expression instantly turn sinister. It's not dark yet. Your Highness is already dreaming? Muyan's eyes turn cold, sneering. Your brain is not good, Your Excellency should go back and take more medicine to nourish yourself, lest a dignified Wangye comes out to make a fool of himself. Jin Wangye's eyes are frighteningly cold. His figure suddenly disappeared, and a powerful Shen Qi spread out. The surrounding Jin Wangfu guards, including the middle-aged man at the peak of heaven stage who escorted Muyan over, all turned deathly pale with fright. In the blink of an eye, he had already appeared in front of Mu Yang and reached out to strangle her neck. However, just when everyone thinks that Muyan will perish under Jin Wangye's hands, Jin Wangye's figure and movements come to an abrupt halt. Mu Yang raises her slender jade hand, and between her slender fingers, there's a silver needle that's flickering with light. At the tip of the silver needle, there's a faintly discernible light blue radiance. The corners of Muyan's mouth gently curl up, as if she's casually gossiping. Jin Wangye had just said that I'm a draft apothecary. Take a guess, what kind of draft did I smear on this silver needle? Chapter 383. The silver needle in his neck was too close, almost less than an inch away. The cold air on the needle seemed to be slowly eroding his skin. Jin Wangye's complexion alternates between green and white. In his eyes, Jun Muyan is the woman he fancies. He could pamper and cherish her, but he could also knead her as he pleased. However, he was being threatened by this woman in front of him, and in public, he was in a dilemma. Jin Wangye takes a deep breath, and only then does he force himself to suppress his gushing anger. He slowly takes a step back. A refined smile slowly hangs on his originally distorted face. Muyan, what are you doing? This prince wants to marry you because he truly loves you. Why must you be so heartless? After a pause, his lips curled into a cruel smile. What's more, even if Muyan is heartless towards this king, she wouldn't go so far as to be heartless towards the young prince of Kaiyang country, your disciple, right? Muyan narrows her eyes, a chill looming in her beautiful peach blossom eyes. Jin Wangye wants to use my apprentice to threaten me. So what if I am? Jin Wangye gazes deeply at Muyan's absolutely beautiful face, his face full of aggression and greed. The woman that Ben Wang wants has never been unable to obtain. But he smiled, and a folding fan appeared in his hand. He unfolded it and waved it gently. However, a melon that is forced is not sweet. Ben Wang will not force Mu Yang to be with me, but Ben Wang wants Mu Yang to stay here for 7 days. Mu Yang won't refuse, right? After 7 days, Ben Wang guarantees that if Muyan is still unwilling, you and Kai Yang's little prince will be safely sent back to Chenyuan City. Mu Yang sneers inwardly. Who was this guy trying to fool? They would really be released after 7 days. However, he couldn't ignore his stupid disciple's life. In any case, she still has to enter this Jin Wangfu. Just as Muyan is about to speak, she suddenly sees a familiar figure coming out of the Wangfu, standing by Jin Wangye's side. The man's cold and gentle voice sounded, "Wangye, the matter you ordered has been completed." When Mu Yang saw the person who came, her pupils slightly contracted. It was actually Bai Chen. Why was he here? Coincidentally, Bai Chen also turned to look at him discreetly. Their gazes met, and their eyes rippled. Mu Yan's heart slightly sinks. Before Jin Wangye can notice the abnormality between the two of them, she quickly withdraws her gaze and slowly says, "Since that's the case, then I'll have to disturb Jin Wangye." After Mu Yan is taken away by the maidservant to rest, Jin Wangye can no longer bear the anger in his heart. There was an ear-piercing shattering sound. The cup on the table was smashed to the ground. A cold and gloomy voice spits out from his thin lips, Good Jun Mu Yan. Just you wait, this king will definitely make you crawl under my feet and beg me to pamper you." "Your Highness, please calm down." The middle-aged man who brought Mu Yan back takes a step forward and says respectfully, "I think that Miss Jun's harsh words might not be because she doesn't adore you, but because she feels that she's not worthy of you." Jin Wangye coldly looks over, not saying anything. Whether it was love or not, he had eyes. How could he not see it? The middle-aged man revealed a meaningful smile. "Your Highness has sent someone to investigate Miss Jun's information. You should know that Miss Jun was once pregnant out of wedlock and now has a 4-year-old son." Chapter 384. Hearing this, Jin Wangye's complexion finally improves a little. He opens the folding fan in his hand and gently waves it. Ben Wang naturally already knew that she had a child. However, this woman, Jun Mu Yan, is very remarkable. Just her ability to refine medicine and her medical skills alone, if Ben Wang could tie her to my side, it would be of great benefit. Not to mention that this woman also has a devastatingly beautiful appearance. That slim waist, that perfectly curved figure, it makes his lower abdomen tighten even more when he thinks of it, wishing that he could immediately taste the taste of an ecstatic corpse. The middle-aged man also nods, then smiles sinisterly. Therefore, this subordinate believes that Miss Jun refused to marry Wangye. Firstly, she feels that she is no longer pure, and is not worthy of Wangye. Secondly, it should be because of that son of hers. This subordinate believes that as long as that son of hers is eliminated, all of Miss Jun's thoughts will be cut off. When the time comes, Miss Jun will definitely be willing to marry Wangye. At that time, she might even give birth to an intelligent young master for Wangye. Hearing the words eliminate that son of hers, Jin Wangye's nose slightly shrinks. His eyes bloom with a cruel and jealous light. That's right, because of Jun Mu Yan's uniqueness, he doesn't mind that this woman once had a child. But when he remembers that this girl was once possessed by another man, he still feels resentment and disgust in his heart. Especially Jun Mu Yan's son. As long as he sees him, he will remember the fact that this woman once belonged to another man. If he can take this opportunity to eliminate him, and also cut off all of Jun Mu Yan's escape routes, that would really be the best. Jin Wangye tilts his head and looks over, slowly saying, "I'll leave this matter to you. Please rest assured, Wangye." The middle-aged man shows a confident smile. "It's just an insignificant child. If this subordinate can't handle it, then this subordinate would have no face to see Wangye. Within 7 days, this subordinate will definitely rush over to attend Wangye and the new Wang Fei's wedding." Late at night, the moon is dark and the wind is strong. The entire Jin Wangfu has sunk into silence. But Mu Yan is leisurely sitting in the darkness, pouring herself a cup of tea from time to time. Not far from her, several maids and guards that Jin Wangfu specially sent to watch over her are sleeping like dead pigs, snoring loudly. Suddenly, the door creaked. The silvery moonlight shone in through the window, accompanied by a tall figure dressed in white. Mu Yang couldn't help but raise the corner of her mouth. "How have you been, Bai Chen?" Bai Chen paused for a moment, then gently closed the door. "How did you get targeted by Jin Wangye? Why are you here?" Both of them blurted out at the same time. Bai Chen's ice-cold eyes are slightly tinged with warmth. He quietly walks over to Mu Yang and sits down. In the darkness, he looks at Mu Yan's face, his eyes very focused. But his line of sight seemed to pierce through Mu Yang, looking into the distant past. Long time no see, Muyin. Ever since he helped Lin Sitong collect her remains in the dense fog forest, he had decided to embark on this path. He had almost forgotten the life he once had and the happiness he once had. Now that he saw Muyin, he suddenly recalled that final tranquility. Chapter 385. After leaving Sitong's grave in the fog forest, I've been looking for an opportunity to kill Gong Chenxue, but there's no way. Bai Chen's mouth hooks up into a self-deprecating smile. After investigating Gong Chenxue, I found out how deep her influence is, and how sinister and frightening her methods are. Even Jing Cheng Country's ghost city has almost fallen into her hands. Relying on my own strength, even if I were to stake the entire Ziyang sect, I still wouldn't be able to contend against her. What's more, how could I be willing to stake my sect? Muyin's heart moves, suddenly lowering her voice. You discovered that Jin Wangye and Gong Chenxue are related? That's right. Bai Chen's eyes flash with a cold light. Jin Wangye appears to be a debauchee Wangye who doesn't care about anything, but in fact, he's a disciple of Tiandao sect. His position in Tiandao sect isn't lower than Gong Chenxue's. I also found out that many of Gong Chenxue's actions have Jin Wangye's shadow. That's because he knows that he can't fight Gong Chenxue with just hatred and solitary courage. That's why Bai Chen thought of approaching the core of Gong Chenxue's power through Jin Wangye, and finally give her a fatal blow. When Muyin fought with Jin Wangye's middle-aged man that day, she noticed that the way his mysterious energy operates is inextricably linked to Tiandao sect. That's why she readily followed them here. Muyin deeply looks at the man in front of her. Wuchen Gongzi Bai Chen is a famous handsome man in Yanwu continent, gentle as jade, handsome and elegant. When they first met, Bai Chen was cold and silent, but his whole body was still filled with a warm aura. But now, there's only deep-rooted hatred and coldness left in those eyes. As if there's no longer a trace of human emotion. However, she remembers Lin Sitong, Bai Chen's lover, who died tragically in Gong Chenxue's hands. Muyin can't help but sigh deeply, her mood inevitably somewhat heavy. She understands Bai Chen's desire to avenge his fiancé. But she's also worried for this man. Because the enemy is too strong, and Bai Chen has already completely resolved to perish together, to avenge Lin Sitong's death. However, as the words of consolation reach her mouth, Muyin ultimately swallows them back. Since that perverted prince is your target, I'll spare his life for now. Mu Yang's voice was careless, as if taking the life of the powerful Wangye was nothing more than a small matter to her. But do you know where my stupid disciple is right now? Deep gratitude flashed in Bai Chen's eyes, but he didn't say anything. Kaiyang Country's third prince Liu Beiyu? Mu Yang sighed and said, if it wasn't that idiot, who else could it be? A smile flashed across Bai Chen's eyes. If he's the one you're looking for, I think I can take you to see him now. The place where Liu Beiyu is imprisoned is a very secret dungeon in Jin Wangfu. The entrance to the dungeon was under a well. Without Bai Chen's guidance, it would not be easy for Mu Yang to find her stupid apprentice. The two of them quietly fell into the well. Bai Chen lowers his voice and says, the guards in the dungeon are all Jin Wangfu's most elite death soldiers. Jin Wangye seems to trust me, but my every move is also under the surveillance of these men of death. Chapter 386. The corners of Mu Yang's mouth lightly hooks up, smiling carelessly. Why bother? Saying that, under Bai Chen's flabbergasted gaze, she takes out a porcelain bottle. The cover of the dungeon's entrance is lifted, and Mu Yang places her palm on the porcelain bottle, slowly activating her mysterious energy. Soon, a wisp of white smoke curls out of the porcelain bottle, winding its way into the dungeon. After about the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, Mu Yang tosses the bottle away and claps her hands. All right, let's go in. Wait, you'll be discovered. Before Bai Chen could finish saying discovered, he sees a scene that makes him dumbstruck. All the guards in the dungeon have fallen to the ground one by one, sleeping like dead pigs. Each and every one of these guards has a cultivation above the peak of Earth stage. The two at the front even have a higher cultivation than Bai Chen. And such a group of death warriors, who could make people's faces change just by talking about them, Can't even hold on for the time it takes to drink a cup of tea under Mu Yang's draft. Bai Yichen gasps in amazement, and he also realizes why Jin Wangye, knowing that Mu Yang is unwilling, knowing that she has a child, still insisted on marrying her as his Wangfei. The entire dungeon has been emptied out by Mu Yang's bottle of draft. The two quickly find the locked-up Liu Beiyu. They see him lying on the bed, sleeping on his back, snoring softly, and a suspicious liquid flowing out of the corner of his mouth. A smile slowly spreads across Mu Yang's face. Bai Yichen sees the bright and beautiful smile on the girl's face, but he feels a chill, and he can't help but take a step back. The next moment, there's a bang. Liu Beiyu, who is sleeping without a care in the world, is directly kicked out of the bed, and he falls like a dog eating mud. Who is it? That son of a bitch dares to sneak up on this prince. Liu Beiyu jumps up from the ground, shouting loudly as he assumes an attacking stance. Smack. A palm slaps the back of his head. A sweet female voice faintly reaches his ears. Who are you calling a son of a bitch? When Liu Beiyu hears the voice, his whole body stiffens. Then he suddenly turns around. Liu Beiyu's eyes redden when he sees the girl's beautiful face right in front of him. Master, is that you? I'm not dreaming, right? Mu Yang looks at him with a smile that isn't a smile. I saw that you were quite happy in your dream just now. Sob. Master, you've finally come to save me. Your disciple is so scared. That Jin Wangye is a pervert. Master, you mustn't marry that pervert. I don't want that kind of shameless master. Liu Beiyu pounces over and hugs Mu Yan's calf, crying his heart out. Mu Yang lifts her foot and kicks it away in disgust. All right, stop howling. I'm warning you, this is the last time I'm going to save you. If you're so useless next time and someone else catches you. Liu Beiyu's eyes are brimming with tears. Master, you will save me, right? Mu Yang coldly squints at him, sneering, you guess? Liu Beiyu shudders, then continues to howl dryly. Am I not an undeserved calamity? That Jin Wangye caught me. Isn't it because he adores you, master? Cough. But master, you wouldn't really be threatened by that Jin Wangye to marry him, right? Don't. This disciple's head can be broken and blood can flow, but master's lifelong happiness absolutely cannot be ruined. Chapter 387. Speaking of which, Liu Beiyu is still an Earth stage practitioner. His innate talent is naturally good. It's just a pity that his interests and hobbies aren't in cultivation at all, to the extent that his cultivation doesn't advance, but instead regresses. Don't, master. Liu Beiyu suddenly lets out a mournful wail. That guy Yang Haoqian's training is completely inhuman, and the final test of the ink camp isn't something that a human can pass. If this disciple goes, I won't be able to come back. Master, please spare me. This disciple will definitely cultivate properly in the future. Liu Beiyu chases after Mu Yan all the way, crying and begging, but it's a pity that Mu Yan completely ignores him. Only when they're on the ground, afraid of attracting Jin Wangye's attention, does he shut his mouth. But his sobbing all the way, looking at Mu Yan from time to time with tears of grievance in his eyes. The three people quietly arrive at the side door of the backyard. Mu Yan looks at Bai Yichen. You must be careful if you stay by Jin Wangye's side alone. His strength is stronger than you think. You must not fight recklessly. Remember to always carry the life-saving draft that I gave you. You must remember, only by keeping your life, can you avenge your fiancé one day. Bai Yichen slowly nods. You should leave quickly. Mu Yan is just about to turn around. Suddenly, she hears the clanging of bamboo wood. That's the night watchman announcing the time on the street outside. It's already the midnight hour. Mu Yan's hand slowly presses on the door bolt, about to use mysterious energy to break it. Suddenly, a violent tremor came from her heart and aura. Mu Yan's brows wrinkle, beads of sweat instantly appear on her forehead. The hand that was originally pressing on the door also softly hangs down. Thump, thump, thump. She hears the violent beating of her own heart, as well as the faint sound of a zither. An indescribable burning pain spreads through her limbs and bones. This kind of pain penetrates the skin and bones, and it's also somewhat familiar. Mu Yan, what's wrong? Master, Why is your complexion so bad? Don't scare me. Muyan slowly raises her head with difficulty, and looks towards the east of Jin Wangfu. There stands a tower there, and at the top of the tower, there seems to be a silver-white light flickering like it's breathing. And Muyan can clearly sense the Tianmo Qin within her body. It was playing on its own, and the rhythm of the music resonated with the flickering light. That's right. She remembered. Why did she feel this pain was so familiar? This kind of pain, as if it wants to tear her whole body apart, isn't it exactly the same as when she made the Tianmo Qin recognize her as its master? In Mu Yang's mind, Bailey Inlo's words suddenly resounded. There is one thing you must remember. The Shun musician's most powerful skill can only be realized through the Tianmo Qin. Therefore, if you want to become a real Shun musician, you must repair the Tianmo Qin. Therefore, the Tianmo Qin needs to be repaired. Could it be that, in this Jin Wangfu, by a freak combination of factors, there just happens to be something that can restore the Tianmo Qin? Just as he was thinking about this, suddenly, a white light shot towards Mu Yang from the top of the pagoda like a shooting star. Bai Ichen and Liu Beiyu are startled. He instinctively rushed forward to help her block the attack. However, that streak of light was simply too fast. Even if Bai Ichen was a heaven rank advanced, he could only feel a gust of wind brushing past his face. That white light has already arrived in front of Mu Yang. Without waiting for the three people to react, it instantly stops in front of Mu Yang. Chapter 388. Seeing this thing, Bai Chen's eyes widened and he exclaimed, "Dragonlight stone. Why would dragonlight stones appear here? What is a dragonlight stone?" Even Mu Yang raised her pale face to look at Bai Chen. Bai Chen takes a deep breath and says, "It is said that the dragonlight stone appeared in the Yanwu continent 1,000 years ago. At that time, there was a heavenly vision, falling into the fog forest, causing millions of people to scramble for it. In the end, everyone only found a grey stone at the place where the anomaly occurred. In the beginning, no one discovered the wonders of this stone. Until one night, when a martial artist was meditating beside the stone suddenly emitted a lustrous white light. As a result, that martial artist's cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds, breaking through a small realm in one night. Since then, people have been fighting over this stone and named it the Dragonlight Stone. But a few hundred years ago, the Dragonlight Stone disappeared. I also saw these records and drawings in Ziyang Zong's secret scrolls, but I didn't expect that the Dragonlight Stone that everyone fought over at that time would actually be in Jin Wangye's hands." Liu Beiyu looks at the dragon dazzling stone that is emitting a soft light, then looks at Muyan. Then why did this dragon dazzling stone suddenly fly in front of Master? Could it be that it wants to recognize Master as its master? But Mu Yang is well aware of it. Of course, the Dragonlight Stone didn't want to recognize him as its master. Instead, it wants to return to its original form, the Tianmo Qin. If she's not mistaken, this Dragonlight Stone should be a piece of material that was split off from the Tianmo Qin. She recalled the markings on the map. The mark on the Yanwu continent is particularly close to the fog forest. But she couldn't find it even after searching for a long time. Now that he thought about it, it must be because the Dragonlight Stone was taken away by someone. Buzz buzz buzz. Clang clang clang. The deafening sound of the zither echoed in his ears. The entire space trembled. It's obvious that the Tianmo Qin can't wait any longer, so it impatiently urges Muyan to quickly fetch the Dragonlight Stone. Mu Yang takes a deep breath and slowly stretches out her hand. When her fingertips came into contact with the Dragonlight Stone, a resplendent light suddenly lit up. The Dragonlight Stone instantly turned into a meteor and flew into her body. Ooh! A tearing pain came from his body. The pain was several times more intense than before, causing Mu Yang to finally let out a muffled groan. Beads of sweat rolled down from her forehead. "Master, what's wrong?" Mu Yang's body is on the verge of collapse. If it weren't for Liu Beiyu's support, perhaps she would have already fallen down. "Help me back to the house first." Muyan tries her best to suppress the pain in her body, and says in a weak voice, "Liu Beiyu, I'm afraid I can't take you back for the time being." "Master, what are you talking about? It doesn't matter if this disciple leaves or not, as long as Master is fine." Lu Beiyu is so anxious that he's about to cry. Master, are you alright? There was something, but it was a good thing. Because she couldn't find a way to repair the Tianmo Qin, Mu Yang has always been worried. She still firmly remembered what Bailey Yinlu had said before she disappeared. Only by restoring the Tianmo Qin can she truly advance to the point where she can leave this Yenwu continent. As for Xiao Bao, only by leaving the Yenwu continent can he grow up healthily and happily. The only depressing thing is that the Tianmo Qin, whether it's recognizing a master or repairing it, is an incomparably painful process. Chapter 389. Supported by Bai Ichen and Lu Beiyu, Mu Yang returns to the room that Jin Wangye has prepared for her. His original escape plan could only be temporarily postponed. The two of them confirmed it several times. After Mu Yang repeatedly assured them that there would be no problems, they left and stood guard outside the door. As soon as Bai Ichen and Lu Beiyu leave, Mu Yang immediately impatiently enters the space. The originally grey Tianmo Qin floats in the air, its body turning crimson once again. It was like blood jade, but it was thousands of times more resplendent and beautiful. 7-colored light filled the entire space, causing the grassland houses in the space to shake gently like illusions. The fat rabbit also woke up from its deep sleep. A pair of Meng Bin-like eyes stare unblinkingly at the Tianmo Qin in the void. His chubby body trembles slightly because of his instinctive fear, but his eyes are filled with awe. Is this the most precious treasure of the three realms, the unique Tianmo Qin? Is this the true coercion of the Tianmo Qin? It was truly powerful and terrifying. It turns to look at Muyan, its Meng Bin eyes glittering. At that time, it still felt that a mere mortal of the Yenwu continent wasn't worthy to be its master, not worthy to order him around. But now, he had to take back those words. To be able to control such a terrible Tianmo Qin, to be able to make the Tianmo Qin willingly bow its head in submission. This Jun Muyan is really worthy of being the little master's mother. No, it should be said that her innate talent is no less than the little master's. Mu Yang resists the pain and sits down cross-legged. Intense pain spread through her limbs and bones, and she felt as if all the bones in her body were about to melt. But perhaps it was because she had already experienced it once. Or perhaps, the restoration process wasn't as crazy as the process of recognizing a master. Therefore, Mu Yang felt that she could still bear it this time. As the internal force in her body revolves, most of the light emitted by the Tianmo Qin begins to enter Muyan's body. 5-colored light flowed through her meridians, making her look like a goddess descending from the heavens. The rabbit blankly stares at Muyan for a while, then immediately begins to absorb the light emitted by the Tianmo Qin. Such an opportunity to use the Tianmo Qin's formidable divine power to forge the body might not even come by in a million years. As she absorbs more and more of the Tianmo Qin's radiance, Muyan feels the pain in her body slowly diminish. Time passed slowly. After an unknown period of time. Clang, there's a sound, and the Tianmo Qin falls from the sky. The light disappears, returning to its original grey appearance. No, it was still very different from before. The original Tianmo Qin looks like an old piece of wood, dark and glossy, as if it could rot and break at any time. But now, the Tianmo Qin's body is as smooth as a mirror, and there's even a faint dark silver pattern on top. It made the zither look ancient yet luxurious. One look and you could tell it was worth a fortune. Muyan opens her eyes and sees the Tianmo Qin that has fallen in front of her. She knows that he has finished repairing it. The air in the space, which was originally fresh, now became incomparably fragrant. Her body was filled with a huge amount of energy, which made her feel a little overwhelmed. Muyan shakes her head and reaches out to touch the Tianmo Qin. Buzz. The zither strings vibrated, and the sound of the zither rang out. It was more beautiful than before, clearer and more distant than before. But in the next moment, a sudden change occurred. With Muyan's touch as the center, the entire Tianmo Qin suddenly splits into countless cracks like a spider's web. The crack grew larger and larger, and then a silver light surged out like an avalanche, abruptly entering Mu Yang's body. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.